Let's go over to the wide receiver position. Tee Higgins is a start, and of course, Antonio Brown. Who does Tom Brady have left, right?
Exactly. We'll start off with Higgins. He was bad last week, right? Between him and Jamar Chase, I think they scored like 6 points. Anyway, it was brutal, right? But that was against Denver. Now they've got the Ravens, okay? That defense is much more generous to wide receivers, allowing 9 touchdowns and the 5th most fantasy points per game to that position since week 9. They've also allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers who line out wide, which is where Higgins runs most of his routes. So keep the faith in Higgins. And then you mentioned Antonio Brown. Now, we assume he's going to be back this week, and we've said it all along. Mike Evans is banged up. Chris Godwin is out. Leonard Fournette is out. So Tom Brady's got to throw the ball to somebody. I understand that he's 33 years old. He hasn't played since October, but the volume of targets could be there, and he's also a guy that's got a really good rapport with Tom Brady, so Brady's not going to be afraid to throw him the football. So AB could actually be available in some leagues because people dropped him because he'd been out so long, and there was talk that maybe the Buccaneers were going to cut him. So look at your waiver wire. If AB's out there, go get him. If you have him on your roster, start him this week. I also like Christian Kirk, and I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but keep tabs on the status of Jared Goff, who is on the reserve COVID-19 list. It never ends, Jen, the headaches. Right. It just never ends.
It never ends. And of course, Jared Goff has the potential to clear in time for the weekend. But then again, maybe he doesn't. Tyler Lockett was having symptoms. We don't know all the details here. So you just have to keep up to date every minute. SI.com/fantasy will keep you up to date. Follow us on social media. As far as sitting wide receivers, you got a couple guys on this list that I think are going to be in the flex conversation for a lot of people, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions. So tough defenses for both Chase Claypool and DeVante Parker. You're not liking the prospect there.
Claypool disappeared last week. I mean, geez Louise, that was an awful time for him to go belly up because the matchup was really good against the Titans, and really none of the Steelers did anything from a fantasy perspective in a week that was just brutal for fantasy managers. 1.9 fantasy points last week for Chase Claypool. But here's the problem. He played 31 snaps and had just 2 targets. That is an issue. Now he's got the Chiefs. They've allowed just 3 touchdowns and the 7th fewest fantasy points to receivers lined out wide in their last 6 games. I can't trust Chase Claypool this week against Kansas City, and I can't trust DeVante Parker either. I told you to start him last week. He had a huge game, but this week he's got the Saints, and Jalen Waddle should be back from the COVID-19 list, which means that there will be fewer targets for DeVante Parker. And also keep in mind the matchup is much tougher against the Saints. Their defense has given up 14.6 or fewer fantasy points to all but 2 wide receivers in their last 6 games. So this is not a great matchup for DeVante Parker. I also don't like Hollywood Brown in standard leagues. In PPR, I think you can play him with confidence. And then Kenny Golladay, if he's still on your roster, you're probably not still alive. And if he is, folks, he needs to go onto the waiver wire. He's been very bad this season.